To begin with this evening, I wanted to take just one moment before I get into my remarks and ask the members to please recognize these people that work, some in the Speaker's office, some in the Chief Clerk's office, the Parliamentarian's office, who serve us every day, and they're people that actually kind of make the wheels of this place turn, from the bill clerks and amendment clerks, roll call clerks, to Kelly and Jen and the stenographers, if the pages, would all of you folks that work in those various offices, the Chief Clerk, the Parliamentarian's office, my office, please rise and let me say thank you on behalf of the House of Representatives for your service to the House. We recognize that often we take your jobs and your tasks for granted, and it's not meant to be that way. And we know that many of the things that we do from a mechanical side of this operation couldn't be done without your loyal and patient service to the House of Representatives, and we thank you. I wanted to also have a fair number of friends and staff and colleagues over here that have joined me today, given this my last day, but I only wanted to introduce a couple of people, and I don't mean that as a disrespect to the others, but given the time and the day and where we are, I did want to just mention a couple people. First, my wife, Donna Bruder-Smith. Please rise. We all know the importance of our family and our spouse in this job, and how much they become a part of our own ability to do the job that we have before us. And my wife's been as supportive as many of your spouses have been to you, I'm sure. She never really liked politics when we were first married, but now when we go to dinners, she's the last one out. She's the one that works the room more than I do, probably. So I want to thank her and let her know how much I appreciate her support and love over all these years. Next, I wanted to introduce my son, Zach, who's a pretty good kid. If you talk to him and he says he's living the dream, he actually means it. Zach, please rise. Zach got the nice gene from his mother. He's like my father. He's smart and he's well-liked, and he's just a real easygoing guy. My daughter, Alex, is married, and her husband, Corey, they live in Michigan, so I didn't feel it necessary to prevail on them to give up a couple of days of their work life to come here, but I want to let the record reflect that my daughter, Alex, is here in the spirit of my heart. Couple other quick friends over here. We have, I just wanted to mention because he's such a unique character, Larson, the bouncer at the Brick House. And one other of my good friends from back in Punxsutawney who's been napping half the day with our fast-paced work. We put him to sleep today, Dave Osakowicz. Dave, please rise. Of my staff, and we all are very appreciative of the people that work for us, but I really wanted to single out just one or two. First, this lady worked for my dad for 4 or 5 years before I was elected, and when I was first here, she could have gone worked for an older member who was going to be a committee chairman, and which would have meant she would have, been able to be an executive or director kind of thing or whatever with the committee and probably made a little more money. But she agreed to stay and work for me, and that was a good thing because she knew the district, she knew some of the people, Debbie Parabek, I'd like you to please rise, and I want to thank you for your many years of loyal and selfless service to myself and to the people of my district. God bless you, Debbie. Yeah, some of these people, they figure they had to put up with me all these years. One other person who couldn't be here, I did want to mention her for the record, is Debbie Manili, who worked in my district office for me for 25 years. And she was kind of my mother, my sister, my boss, my conscience. She was all those things that we need in a district office person to kind of keep your feet on the ground and keep you going straight. And last but not least, I wanted to acknowledge and thank my Chief of Staff, Tony Aliano. Tony, please rise. I know you're shy, but Tony's been a confidant and an advisor and someone who has been a really good friend, and sometimes that's what you need in this business, someone who will tell you what you need to be told. And I thank you, Tony, for your years of service as well. To get into my remarks, I want to reflect on something that I have talked about from time to time on some of these types of days, swearing-in day or whatever, and it's something I've referred to as the collective wisdom. And I've handed out something that's, I put the title Collective Wisdom on there, but it's actually the Constitutional Convention speech presented by Benjamin Franklin, and it was on the last day of the Constitutional Convention on Monday, September 17th, 1787. And I hope that you'll take time to read it, and if you can get beyond the eloquence of his words and his writing, there are several salient points that I think are worthy to bring out. And I direct these remarks to especially the members who will be serving in the next session. The first point that I think is so important in this work of art that Benjamin Franklin crafted at the end of the Constitutional Convention, he makes the point about the Church of Rome is infallible and the Church of England is never wrong. The point being that each of us come here with our own views and we think we are right, and we are entitled to think we're right. But as he goes on, he laments a little bit about that fact and that maybe that isn't always the way it is. And he later says, "For when you assemble a number of men who have the advantage of their joint wisdom, you inevitably assemble with those men all their prejudices, their passions, their errors of opinion, their local interests, and their selfish views." And if that doesn't speak to what the nature of this body is, with the diversity of this state of Pennsylvania, that each of us come here with our prejudice, our passions, our errors of opinion, our local interests, and our selfish views, but that we must accept that as a part of this process. And ultimately, while Benjamin Franklin didn't agree with everything in this proposed constitution that was going to be taken back to the diverse colonies who all had their own special interests of their community, why they were here, how they were created, how they evolved into the beings that they were as the respective colonies. He came to the conclusion that sometimes you have to give a little bit and accept what is really good, and it's generated by that. He referred to it as joint wisdom. I refer to it as collective wisdom. And he makes another point that I think is also equally important. He says, if every one of us, in returning to our constituents, were to report the objections he has had to it and endeavor to gain partisans in support of them, we might prevent its being generally received. And with that, I oftentimes see in our world today, one of my phrases is that there's 101 ways to blow up a bill. There's only one or two ways to get one passed. If our focus is to only point out the faults, then we will be held in a state of inertia and unable to get anything done. And I hope as the members of this legislative body go forward that they can be mindful of that point that even our founding fathers, who we hold in great esteem, they realized that you couldn't always wait for the perfect and that you had to be willing to give and take a little bit. I should have mentioned this, this speech was brought to my attention by Justice Saylor after an evening. From time to time, he and I would get together and just sort of talk about the issues of the day, and sometimes we would actually get into debating the Constitution. It's something I found a lot of fun in, debating the Constitution with justices of the Supreme Court. And I say that because I think it's important for us to recognize, and something that I hold as a strong element of what I love about this place, and that is that the legislature is a co-equal branch of government, and that just because I'm a House member doesn't mean I can't debate the Constitution with a justice of the Supreme Court. And I hope that you as individual members recognize that, but understand there's a caveat to that. The equal power of the legislative branch to our sister branches of government is not embodied in any one of us. It is embodied in that joint wisdom, that collective wisdom of the House and the Senate, that is the legislature. And that if we want to exercise as a body that co-equal power with the administrative and judicial branches of government, we can only do it when we come together and employ that collective wisdom to be our position. And therein lies the strength of the legislature. I want to conclude with one other point, and it's really to answer a question that I'm sure many of you have gotten from time to time from constituents or friends, and it's one of those where somebody will be talking to you about your job and what you do, and they'll say, I don't know how you do what you do. I don't know how you do that. And I've never really answered that question, but tonight I would like to do that. I was fortunate enough when I first came to the House to have had my father immediately precede me. And my father was well-liked, he was trusted, and he was respected. So when I arrived in this House, I was sworn in January of 1987, I was temporarily afforded a lot of that respect and trust that had been my father's, both from the members, from staff, from the various people that work around this town. I was afforded that on a temporary basis. And I say it was temporary because I still had to ultimately live up to that. I eventually had to earn it and maintain it. And I could only do that if I demonstrated that same level of trustworthiness, of honesty, of respect. And respect is a two-way street. To that point, parenthetically, I would just say I want to thank you all for the respect that you have afforded me, and particularly over these last 4 years as Speaker. It is very, very much appreciated. And the tools that I employed to garner that respect, to build that trustworthiness, are just a couple of simple things. One, it's something I've always kind of enjoyed, and I call it the brutal truth. I've found it interesting around here sometimes when you tell somebody the brutal truth, they think you're not telling them the truth, and they start spinning around in circles, chasing their tail because they think what you told them isn't exactly what you meant. And sometimes it was actually more fun to watch somebody assume you were misleading them when you were telling them the brutal truth. But it carries you a long way in this business. The second, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, is respect. Clearly a two-way street. Respect is something that you only get when you share it first. The final tool that I have found to be so important, and maybe I didn't necessarily come here with this thought, but I certainly grew into it and leave here with this thought. And that is that it is very hard to do this job if you allow yourself to become ingrained with hatred. It's okay to maybe hate an idea, it's okay to hate an object, but it is not okay to hate another person. And the flip side of hate is something that I have learned is the most important element of life. It's the most important element for each of us to share, and that is love. And I can say, while I don't necessarily like everybody in the room, there's some people I really don't maybe want to hang out with, in all candor, but I do not hate, and in fact, I do love each and every one of you. I hope that as the new session begins, that you might reread Benjamin Franklin's speech that he had delivered to the Constitutional Convention. I hope that you will hold those principles that he espouses near and dear and try to live to them. And I hope that you might employ those tools that I just spoke of the brutal truth, of respect and love for your fellow man and woman of this body and of your communities. And with that, I know that this body will be a better place when you leave it than when you came. God bless you all, and my best wishes on a great session next year.